But the bottom line is, my mother promised God. Now, she was an avid knitter. And she promised God that if I lived, she would never knit on Shabbos, which was Friday night and Saturday. Not because she was religious, but because it was just a promise that she made. And until I turned 18, my mother never knit on Saturday. Okay, she just kept that promise. And my father used to joke with me. He said, "You see, if mommy knew what you would grow up to be, I don't think she ever would have made that promise." That was our joke. But I mean,
Yeah, my brother was the same thing. They didn't expect him to live neither. And this was during World War II, where doctors were very rare at the time. And one of the doctors said he's not eating or anything, so feed him beer, because there wasn't anything really fattening. And that's what he used to drink, beer all the time, instead of milk, to fatten him up more. Now you know why he's that way.
Well,
we're going off the topic quite a bit.
Well, we've stuck to the topic. We've gone off the topic, but basically it's remained in a sort of a religious vein.
And a lot of people, I said this at the beginning of the show, a lot of people will say that a white man doesn't have a soul.
Say that again?
You never heard the expression that white men don't have a soul?
No, I never heard that.
Well, actually, it's not that they don't have a soul. They say like they don't have a soul in their body. We're talking about like soul, as far as music and certain rhythm.
Okay, never mind. I get it.
It's like white men can't jump.
Yeah, exactly.
White men have no rhythm.
Yep.
I get it.
Yeah, but I got news
for you.
for you.
Minutes to get that.
If that's the case, I know many a couple who don't have any rhythm at all because they're using the rhythm method and they wind up getting pregnant all the time. So what's wrong with that picture?
God.
What's the matter?
She can't believe how off we go, how much we're going off.
I can't believe where we're going. Yes.
I mean, I don't know how we got into a rhythm method, but at least it keeps us within a religious mode, because I know
there you go.
Most religions don't believe in kind of birth control, except the rhythm method, I guess.
There you go.
So actually, we were within the religious, and also celibacy, I guess, is a good way of not getting into trouble. And,
lots of people practice celibacy.
Well, that's because we're just too old to do anything
else. It's called
marriage. Yeah. It's called old and fat like us. The older you get, the more you can refrain from having sex. Put it that way. Anyway.
Well, the mind might be willing, but the body just doesn't react.
As long as the mind is willing, I don't care what the body.
I think my Viagra needs a Viagra. That's what it is.
All right, I've got another call. This is definitely not an area code I know.
All right, we have to behave ourselves.
Hello, this is the Rebellious Rev. Who's this?
Yes, hi, my name's Chad out of New York. How you doing?
Out of New
Chad.
York. We're in New York.
Good.
What area of New York?
Are you upstate?
Yeah, I'm upstate.
Okay.
Because we're downstate.
Yeah, what are you guys by New York City?
Yeah.
Long Island, actually.
Oh, Long Island. Forget about it.
Yeah, that's it. Forget about it. And then we got a caller from Denver who's originally from...
Brooklyn.
Where are you originally from, man? Queens?
Yeah, another New Yorker.
Okay, Chet, what's up?
Well, I saw that you guys had a little post that you believe that man has a soul, and being a fundamental Christian, a Bible-believing Christian, I do believe that man does have a soul.
And that's a good thing. Believe me, because...
It is good.
As I said earlier, I don't know whether you heard earlier on the show, I have a very dear friend down in Florida who, more or less feels that these religious stories are nothing more than, fairy tales. He doesn't believe in a life after death. He doesn't believe that he has a soul. He believes that death is the end and that there's nothing afterwards. And, of course, I quoted from T.S. Eliot from his Hollow Men, who says, this is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. For people who are believers, whether they're Christians or not, you don't have to be a Christian to be a believer, okay, that you have a soul and that there is something after death. I would hate to think that death is the end, okay, and that there is nothing else. I mean, let's say nobody has come back.
Yeah, but I can... Yeah, well, my thought on a soul, too, is that... as an apologist and an evangelist, I study a lot about how to make a defense of my faith, and a lot of people will bring up the soul, and they'll bring up the fact whether or not they believe in a heaven and hell or literal heaven and hell. I tell them, I said, well, look, I could show you right now that you can trust that there's a real soul in you. And they kind of look at me that I look like I have four heads, and then they'll cut it and say, well, how do you prove that we indeed have a soul? And if you guys want to, I can share some things with you that I've learned. I don't know if there's anybody out there that disagrees. Is there anybody out there that disagrees with us?
Yeah, we'd love to hear you.
Well, I don't know. I think, Ann, you believe the man has a soul, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so far we're all believers here. I don't know about listeners, but the people that, Felix and I, and we're the ones on the phone with you, so we believe.
Okay. Well, one of the things that you can do is study a little acronym, and it's CRIMES, C-R-I-M-E-S, CRIMES. And you can kind of entitle it Crimes Against Reality. This is my thoughts. I'm under the pupilship of Frank Turek, who is a wonderful apologist. And crimes is a wonderful way to prove to people that we indeed live in a physical reality, as the atheists would proclaim. They would say, well, I'll quote Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins says, do you guys know who Richard Dawkins is, by the way?
I don't, but Mark?
No. I've heard the name.
Okay, he's a very well-known atheist, probably one of the most popular atheists in the world. And here's what he says. He says, if we come from the universe, then we would act like the universe. There is no mortals, no goods and evils, no cruels and kinds, nothing but blind, purposeless, pitiless indifference. And that's a mouthful, but basically what he's saying is, look, if we come from the universe, and by the way, he would be right. If it did indeed come from the universe in the sense that we came from the Big Bang, then there's no reason to believe that we have reason at all. And there's no reason to believe that mortals exist. It's really just opinion and, well, I'll quote another one. He says that our bodies are just dancing to the sound of its own DNA. So what do you conclude? Well, is rape wrong? Yes. I hope you guys are all saying yes.
Oh, is
love good?
Definitely.
Yeah, those are all good, right? Definitely. But how do we know that? Because if we come from the universe, we're just a product of evolution, then we really don't know how we ought to behave in an objective sense. We know how to ought to behave through a subjective sense, meaning your opinion versus mine. But you can't go to anybody and say, hey, murder is wrong, rape is wrong. Well, let me tell you, in Genesis 1:16, it says that you're made in God's image. And because He is love, we can love. Because we use logic and reason is a reflection on how He thinks. So, the way you could tell you have a soul and a conscience is by simply looking at reality through your own mind. You are the example. I don't have to go any further. I think that you know that raping a child just for fun is definitely wrong. How else do you know otherwise? We don't. And we can simply go into other countries like we did in World War II when Hitler was killing 6.5 million Jews, and we could say, hey, you can't do that, and we're going to stop them. Otherwise, it's really just your opinion against Hitler's opinion, whether killing 6.5 million Jews is right or wrong. So that's one way you have a soul.
Now, how do you explain people like ISIS?
How do I explain what ISIS?
Explain them.
I didn't understand what.
How do you explain somebody like an ISIS who don't who have absolutely no feeling of about other people?
Yeah, well, that's a great point. That's a good question. If I have morals and ISIS has different set of morals, how do we know if our morals are right and wrong? Heck, maybe ISIS has it right. Maybe slaughtering people for the sake of a religion is the right thing to do. Maybe that's the healthy thing to do. And heck, instead of marrying one woman, like I'm happily married myself, maybe I should marry 700 women. I mean, after all, I'm spreading my genes all over the planet, right? Isn't that kind of survival of the fittest? I'm getting rid of all the bad not-me's, and I'm putting more of me into the world.
You still have in the Middle East, I mean, the Saudis, he travels with 3 or 4 wives, and he's got about 4 or 5 more that remain back home.
Yeah,
even
they
in this
beat
day
them
and age.
too. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the question then becomes, is that right? The question is whether that's right or wrong.
Well, you see,
if we can't answer that question, what's that?
I was going to say that in the Old Testament, starting with Abraham, obviously, when Sarah could not conceive, she told him to lay with her handmaiden, Hagar, and Ishmael was born. And then after the angels came to visit, they said that Sarah will become pregnant, and Sarah reacted like any jealous woman. She found Abraham spending too much time with Ishmael, and she said, well, she has to go, when it was her idea from the beginning, and thus we have the beginning of the
polygamous marriages.
Right, the Arab religion, Islam, and or actually the Arab religion, or Arabs as a race, not before a religion. If you consider that Muhammad was the prophet, so that Islam really came about around 613 BC, I think, or
not BC.
BC? No, AD.
After the
AD, right? AD. But I mean, who was it?
Yeah. Well, God also got these things. He didn't.
Jacob had many wives. I mean, in the Old Testament, a lot of
That's right.
Fathers,
and he was punished for it. He was punished for it. Yeah.
They all had many
he was
wives.
punished. And actually, David was punished. He decided to not only have concubines, he decided to take on Uriah's wife. Bathsheba.
Right.
He had him killed. He had him murdered. He had sex with Bathsheba, and guess what? Their kid died.
That's right. You're 100% right. That son died, and eventually Solomon came, and Solomon was the heir to the throne. But
he had problems. He was a bad dad.
Oh.
So there's a whole curse. There's this whole curse in mind. See, the thing is, and we're kind of getting off track a little bit, but the whole point of this is, look, God intended, if you look all the way back in Genesis, for one man, one woman to cleave onto each other, to leave their families, to leave their moms and dads, to be joined in unity in marriage as one man and one woman in one flesh. That was God's design. But the point of marriage isn't so that we can get together and make babies. It really is a purpose behind it. It's ready for this? A foreshadowing or an example of God's relationship with his people. even right down to the intimacy. You know, the devil did not create sex.